Hi, I'm Mark.
Hey, I'm Scott, and this is Church is Lame, the podcast where we try to fix the church by talking about stupid things Christians do that break the entire body.
You know what, Scott? Teenagers don't seem to like me, and I don't understand why.
Ah! No, I don't understand why either. But
Yeah,
Christian,
I've got
teenagers though,
candy.
yeah. Oh man, don't even go there. So, but then again, teenagers rightfully don't like anything. So, you know,
Oh, there's that.
is what it is, and you don't fight reality, right? But to get to the bottom of this, the Barna group actually went and studied some teenagers. And what they found out was that teenagers actually seem to like Jesus just fine. It's Christians they don't like.
This isn't really a surprising result.
Exactly. I think you and I probably talked about this in kind of a tangential ways a lot,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
like, there's a lot of Christians I don't like.
Yeah, no kidding, right? This is kind of interesting though, because I don't typically think of teenagers as ones watching like a televangelist and listening to Christian podcasts, right?
hmm
I imagine my assumption is that when you're asking teenagers what they know about Christians, they're probably talking about the Christian adults in their own lives, you know?
Yeah, probably for the
And
most part.
and so the interesting part of this is that Jesus was thought of by the teenagers who were studied, as loving and merciful and kind and somebody that you'd want to be a friend with, somebody who
hmm
you'd want to do life with. And Christians were seen as more judgmental or hypocritical than Jesus. I can't imagine that could possibly be true, Mark.
Oh, not at all true. Like, the stupid thing about this is not just that, like, well, duh,
Yeah,
but it's that, if people on the outside of the church can look at the church and see that so clearly,
yeah,
why doesn't why don't I
yeah,
don't whatever English, it's a
yeah.
stupid language.
Words is hard.
But like the people within the church have way less excuse for not noticing that, and
Yeah,
I think that like a lot of Christians notice that trend, but like there is kind of a main, I get maybe not like the mainstream of Christianity,
hmm,
but like within the mainstream of culture, there's a loud subsect of Christianity, right? And like that seems to me like who these teens are probably thinking of the most.
yeah. When I think of teenagers, I think of a crossroads. On the one hand, you have teenagers who have their whole lives in front of them. So there's an element to teenagers that's very aspirational
hmm
and very idealistic and hopeful, right? When they see that future. And then of course, when you're a teenager, you're old enough to recognize that your parents and the generations who came before you have handed you kind of a really crummy set of cards, dealt you a really crummy set of cards,
hmm
climate change, industrialization, um, politics run amok, being on the edge of nuclear war, like we have not done like really what our hearts desire, which is to hand them a world that was better than the world that we've been handed, right? And so I think they're always on that kind of like right on the X of that crossroads. And so then when they think about like when they see their idealism and their hope for the future, I think they kind of see themselves as having a kinship with Jesus, right? They see Jesus as the same kind of person who came to earth to make things better, to point humanity in a better direction than they were on. And then they look at the Christian adults in their lives on TV, on Fox News, on whatever, and they're kind of going, not so much. Yeah, like if that's Christianity and not Jesus, then I think I would rather not be part of that.
Yeah, and like the biggest problem is within the church is like how much it hemorrhages its young people. So, teens, they go off, or high school teens, they go off to be college teens, and they generally kind of fall away.
Yeah,
And this is not a new problem, and this is not a surprise to anybody. I mean, just anybody who goes to church and who's at least paying attention has seen this happen time and time and time again.
yeah,
But this Barna study seems to be pointing out like the issue isn't a matter of, faith. It's not a matter of training. It's a matter of just you being a jagweed.
yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
that's what's driving them away from the church, is because they're going out and they're seeing how much of a jerk we are.
Yeah, yeah. I have a premise that I've spoken. If you're new to the show, I've got this premise that I keep circling back to, that people tend to not invest in churches because most churches don't give them a great picture of anything worth investing in, right? Whether
Hmm.
it be your money, your time, your talents, right? A lot of churches, especially here in America, seem to be more focused on growth than they are with anything of actual spiritual value, right? And I think that can be said equally for the situation where you're talking about, where like the church works really, 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 really hard to get young kids to accept Christ and get baptized, right? And then there's this falling off period where they fall away. And I don't think it's that they're actually falling away. It's that the church hasn't given them anything to inspire them, to put them on a mission or to put them on a path that feeds that idealism, that hopefulness, that hope for the future and seeing their own road ahead. Like, okay, so you're telling me like that the road ahead is to try to convince more people to come to church, to put money in the pot so we can have like a nice fitness facility,
Yeah,
and,
it's
yeah,
absurd. But
yeah,
like, I mean, ultimately, I mean, just it's all these things aside, right? Like, this is telling us what we need to do to build the church back up
yeah.
and to get the young people in the church more engaged.
Right. There's a very popular phrase in politics that goes that demographics is destiny. And I 100% believe this. And I was saying probably 12, 20 years ago,
Hmm.
like when it comes to LGBTQ and trans issues and things like that, the kids don't care about this stuff anymore. And so the process is moving much, much, much slower than I originally thought it would.
Hmm.
But this article kind of reinforces to me that the young people are actually better poised for a faith life than the older generations. Like it seems like they are they are naturally and instinctive understand that love is better than hate, that peace is better than war, that reconciliation with one another is better than punishing one another in perpetuity. And they
Right.
see
But
they
then,
yeah,
but like, how then, like, do we empower, like, not like the church leadership, but like people like you and me, like how, like, what can we do to empower teens to then just be the church? Because if the older generation is screwing it up,
yeah,
and a lot of times older people don't take teens very seriously, whether they're in
yeah,
high school or whether they're in college, but they have a lot to contribute,
yeah,
and they have to learn how to take the reins at some point. I feel like it's up to the, like, people like you and me, and anybody who's listening to this, to like empower those teens to actually stand up and be the church. But like, how do we do that other than, handing them a whip and
yeah.
telling them go and cleanse that thing?
There's a lot of answers for that. I'm sure you and I both have a lot of answers to this question.
Hmm.
I think, and I think that the starting point from my point of view is you cannot empower anybody to do anything if you're not willing to give up the reins of power,
Hmm.
right? So as much as I hate to think of it as a zero sum game, kids aren't endowed with resources. They're given resources, right? They're given knowledge from people. They're given the resource of compassion from people. They're taught how to love, how to hate. They're taught how to be good with money. They're taught how to be um, wise through education, right? These are all things that they are given through their lives, right? And so when talking about empowering these young people uh, for the kingdom, well, that means that the old people need to be willing to give them some of this power. And that's where I think it starts.
Yeah, and I don't think we're gonna like get those old people to give them the power very well.
Right. That,
Um,
yeah. Yep.
but I also don't see it. I mean, I don't see it as a zero sum thing. We, like, you can't have, two different people, holding on to the horse's reins.
Right.
It's like, only one person can be in front. So it's like we can take a seat in back, on the back of the horse, if you will. Um,
Yeah.
but I feel like we can empower youth by permitting them to do Christian stuff outside of the church context itself. Because I think a lot of churches, at least the churches that I've been part of in my life, right? Like a big problem there is just like everything is kind of institutionalized within that church. So kind of
Mm-hmm.
everything has to happen in the church with the church's blessing.
Right, right, right.
And certainly like we need to look out for like, things like heresy or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I get that. But I feel like a lot of those structures also, by virtue of their organization, prevent teens from being able to take authority and leadership in that organization.
Yeah.
Like they're actively suppressed by it. And I think like people like you and me can give them opportunities to say, look, forget your church, just do the Christian thing. And
Yeah.
here's how we can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Kids will always be a step ahead of the parents, right? That's just the way of the world. That's, in
Yeah.
everything, right? Kids will always be a step ahead. And so I think that because we now live in the age of information where bits fly across the internet as fast as the speed of light, I think that what's going to happen is that there's going to be a generation of kids that basically they reinvent church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And instead of organizing like, hey, let's start a home church, and there'll be like 5 or 10 of us, and from there, we'll elect somebody. We'll hey, you're the gifted communicator, so you're the person who's a teacher, and you're the guy who can play guitar, so you're the worship leader, right? And kind of like
Yeah.
instead they're going to organize through the web, right? And so instead of having a home church, they're going to start as whatever it is, the Snapchat, the Facebook, the YouTube, or whatever. And we're going to see communities that organize around mission instead of organizing around geographic region.
Yeah. I like that way of saying it.
Yeah.
A body is organized around mission.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way of looking at it.
Yep. I do believe that's what I think. So yeah. And then the worst, I don't think there was anything unobvious about the article.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Including the way it ends. And the article ends by criticizing the teenagers for bad theology. It's like you were so close to understanding what the teenagers were trying to tell you, and then it went right by. You went right by it,
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not gonna sit here and say that like all teenagers have a thoroughly excellent theological training. But neither do the vast majority of people in the church.
Right, like that's what. So the study was a really nice way for teenagers to say, "Hey, old people, your theology sucks." Like if your theology leads you to treat gay people this way and to treat young girls who are afraid and have abortions, if it lets you punish them, and your whole life is about political power and punishing people, then your theology needs to die, right? And so that's what the teenager's saying is, yeah, of course you're going to think we have bad theology because we think yours is even worse,
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, in true form, the adults are like, no, you're just bad at life.
Right, you're just stupid teenagers, right? You're just stupid teenagers. It's like, okay, well, guys, like, yeah, who cares? Suffer ye the children, but what do those people know?
Oh, well, they know how to become wealthy, imprisoning human beings and treating them like chattel slavery.
Yeah. So on the one hand, like I look at this story and I kind of look at the church as it exists and kind of just do a face palm. But on the other hand, I'm left very hopeful that we have finally failed enough generations that there's a generation coming who's in the words of the great prophet D. Snyder of Twisted Sister, they're not going to take it.
Yeah, like this article left me feeling more hope than it did, anything else.
Absolutely. Dig it. All right. Listen, we love you guys, and we are so incredibly thankful that you continue on this crazy journey with us to continue trying to make a case for, well, it's not just because kids are falling away from the church that the church is becoming irrelevant. There are real reasons why people are turning away from the church, and we're glad you're on this journey with us. So by all means, we'd love you to hit subscribe and become a permanent part of this journey with us. Or if you'd like to, send us an email at churcheslanepodcast@gmail.com and tell us what you think. Do the kids get it? Are they on the right track? Or is there time to intervene and get them reoriented. Let us know what you think. And then once again, thank you.
Yeah, and with that, I'm gonna avoid the normal benediction and just say, hey, go and be the church, whatever age you are. Amen.